no one here. Good evening, everyone. I'm Colleen Feige, the president of the League of Women Voters, Edina, and I'd like to welcome you to our first candidate forum of the 2020 general election season. Tonight's candidate forum is for the State Senate District 49. And I just wanted to say a couple words about the League of Women Voters at the beginning. We are a nonpartisan organization, and what we do is we work to grow, empower, and protect the vote. To grow, an example of growing the vote, we registered high school students to vote on Friday at Edina High School. To empower the vote, we do things like candidate forums so people know what the people that they are voting on expect or project. And to protect the vote, we encourage you to vote from home in this election. It's very easy. If you haven't requested an absentee ballot, go to mnvotes.org. You can request it there. If you have requested it, the absentee ballots will be sent out beginning in September 18th. And we'd encourage you to pick your candidates and return it as soon as possible, just so that it's in and it will be counted. So thank you, and let me introduce our moderator for the evening, Gretchen Sable. Thank you very much for doing this.
Thank you very much, Kelly. So my name is Gretchen Sable, and I'm with the League of Women Voters from Anoka, Blaine, Coon Rapids area, LWV ABC. The reason I'm from a different league is because I don't have any connection to this race, and so I'm a completely neutral person in this race. I want to thank you for watching the forum. The purpose of this evening's forum is to provide an opportunity to hear the candidates for Senate District 49. All the candidates who are running for this office and will be on the November 3rd ballot were invited to this forum. One of those candidates decided not to participate. Due to COVID-19, the forum is being live streamed now by the City of Edina on Edina TV, Comcast Channel 813 High Definition, and Comcast Channel 16 Standard Definition. The city website, www.edinamin.gov, and on Facebook city page, the city page for Facebook for Edina. It will be available on Edina TV YouTube tomorrow, as well as on the League of Women Voters Edina website, lwvedina.org. A schedule for the rebroadcast of Edina TV times and dates on Comcast channel is presented immediately following the presentation of this forum, so it will be rebroadcast quite a bit too, as well as being available on demand as you choose. The questions were collected electronically from the general community before the forum because we don't have a live audience due to COVID. So we're going to have some important issues that we're discussing tonight. We're going to try to cover as many issues as possible in the time we have. Please feel free to contact the candidate directly if your question was not answered tonight. So now I'm going to explain the ground rules and the format for tonight's forum. The candidate is to remain seated throughout the entire forum. The candidate has 2 minutes to make an opening statement and up to 3 minutes to answer the questions sent out in advance. The candidate will then have 1 minute to answer each question submitted by the general community. The candidate will have 2 minutes to make a closing statement. League volunteers will time the candidate's responses and indicate to the candidate when they have 45 seconds remaining, 30 seconds remaining, 15 seconds remaining, and when she must stop. The moderator asks all the questions. That's me. LWV Edina determines which questions will be asked and attempts in good faith to cover the topics of interest indicated by the submitted questions. All written questions become the property of LWV Edina. The speaker may remove their face mask when making their opening and closing statements and when answering questions. So at this point, I'd like to introduce Incumbent Senator Melissa Franzen. And we're going to get started with your opening remarks.
Thank you. Thank you and good evening. And I wanted to first start by thanking the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum, and Gretchen and Colleen and all the wonderful people who work on democracy and making sure it works for all of us. I also want to make sure that everybody knows my appreciation for the respectful nature of this moment, wearing masks, being socially distanced, and that is why we are here in a pretty much empty room having this discussion. But I appreciate having the opportunity to talk to my constituents and to my state, which I represent in the Minnesota Senate and have been doing so for the last 8 years. Current COVID-19 is real. It's not a hoax. It's something that has impacted all of us, including the legislature. And we've been trying to continue to keep Minnesotans safe by doing special sessions and by expanding a lot of the efforts that we want to make sure that our essential workers, that then our frontline workers, and so many other folks that are being affected have what they need to pretty much weather this storm and come out of this stronger. I believe in good government. I think government is there for a purpose, and this pandemic is one of those purposes, to be vigilant about emergencies and have the resources in place to keep Minnesotans and people safe. I grew up in Puerto Rico, and I have always been prepared for the next hurricane. We always stock up on water. We always stock up on canned goods. And this is similar in terms of Minnesota stocked up, and we were prepared for the storm with good government, good reserves of $1.6 billion, and now we also had the reserves. That was the surplus, and we were able to have a plan when COVID hit to make sure unemployment insurance was spent and spread to those who needed it the most. I appreciate the time. I look forward to the questions. And again, thank you for having me.
Thank you. The following question was sent out in advance so that she's had time to practice an answer here. The candidate will have 3 minutes to respond. The question is, how do you propose to address Minnesota's budget shortfall? Please discuss solutions such as tax increases, cutting funding to programs, and moving money from other sources.
Thank you for that question. That is a fundamental question of our 2021 legislative session. Hopefully, I am part of that new body of the legislature and the Senate to tackle that issue. Right now, we know we have a general fund deficit of $2.3 billion for the current biennium and $6.6 for the next, combined with this biennium with the next one of 2022-2023. So it's a big hole that we're going to have to fill in a responsible and prudent way. And when you have a family budget, you find ways of not spending things that are not important or essential, and discretionary funding goes the first thing that goes away. I think we're going to have to do a combination of all of the above. Everything should be at the table. Certainly in our district, we've experienced tax hikes in the past. I think that is the last resort, shouldn't be the first priority. People are hurting. They're losing their jobs. They're losing their revenues. They're losing their profits. And at the end of the day, we want to come out of this as a strong economy. So certainly we're going to have to look at all the options of cutting, of dealing with discretionary spending. I've talked to some senior senators in the legislature, in the finance committee, and I've asked them, have we ever cut anything? And the silly answer would be, no, we haven't. Would you want to cut Senator Franzen's legacy bill on her pet project? Well, you know what? We're going to have to look at everything and make sure that everything that is being spent and your taxpayer dollars are going to where it's needed the most. I've had the privilege of serving in Health and Human Services. That budget usually is the first one you look at for cuts, and it's the one that impacts most Minnesotans' daily lives, from housing to food stamps to all the supports on health care and Minnesota Care. So that is something that I'm going to look at very closely, that we don't hurt rather than help solve a problem, that we don't make that problem deeper and a bigger gap in inequities in our system. We also know the schools is a huge part of our funding, and we want to make sure that they have what they need. Today was my assessment with my 5-year-old that's going to kindergarten for the first time, and it's a different ball game. I've had to buy masks for him for his first day of school. I want to make sure he has what he needs to be safe. He's going to a local public school. I'm proud of the work and the effort that has gone through to make sure that those spaces are safe, but I want to make sure that the state has its part in making sure that all Minnesotans feel safe sending their kids to school, going to work, and resuming normal activity as soon as possible. But this is going to be a long haul, and the budget is going to be a part that all of us are going to have to fix together. So I look forward to looking at the options, but all of them are, frankly, are needed to be looked at, including additional revenue potentially for new areas that we've always agreed as well in a bipartisan level. Like, well, I'll leave it at that for now. Thank you.
Thank you. So now we have the questions that were submitted by the general community. These questions came in through the LWV Edina website or via email to lwvedina@gmail.com. Each question, the candidate will get 1 minute to answer each question. Are the timers all set there? Okay. Question 1. Do you favor passing a bonding bill in the legislative session beginning in January 2021? Why or why not?
Yes, yes, yes. I've favored it from the beginning. Always will favor a bonding bill. It's the way that Minnesota invests in our infrastructure, maintains our state assets. We fix our roofs. We can't let them deteriorate. So we want to make sure that we invest in our state. A lot of this money goes for our state colleges and universities. It goes to state-owned assets and buildings and preservation. Some of it also goes through some transportation projects, although I'd rather have a different avenue for transportation funding that's sustainable. But this is something that we should have passed a long time ago this year, and it's been politicized, and unfortunately we haven't. But I support a bonding bill that takes care of all infrastructure all over Minnesota, including one of the bonding proposals I had was for the Metro Public Safety training facility here in Edina.
Thank you. Question 2. What needs to happen for the two sides of the Senate to rationally discuss a bonding bill or other issues?
Well, that's a loaded question. I wrote something on MinPost this week, so if you want to see my reflections of what I believe needs to happen in the legislature and in politics as a whole is civility. And I believe that we need to put the politics aside, and especially in a time where a pandemic is hurting all of us, not just one side of an opinion, whether it exists or not just one party. And we get to business. We get to business to keep your kids safe, to keep your family safe, keep your parents safe and your grandparents safe. So I think if we go back to what we used to be, a body of civility and decorum and process, I think it would go a long ways. But that has all been gone through the wayside, and all rules are off. And I think we need to start being adults and bringing back the rules.
Thank you. The third question also relates to the bonding bill, and you already touched on it a little bit in your previous answers. What projects in your district will be impacted if there's no bonding bill?
I did touch on that. So I have a project that I'm actually a chief author, which is the West Metro Public Safety Facility. That's a regional asset that helps not just our police, but also our firefighters train and get better, and it also helps train our first responders in the region. And it's also a combination of using the space for training for others who don't have that facility nearby, come and rent their space and use it. I've toured it. I've talked to our first responders and recognized that is something that we need to invest in. So Democrats are for public safety, and an example is the bill that I just authored. But there's other bills that I've co-authored that's also for our district: transportation, an underpass over in Bloomington, the Arts Civic Center in Bloomington as well, and many other bills that I support because they are investments in our state, and that should be considered in a bonding bill should we be able to afford one. And I think this year we should pass one that's big enough to keep our economy going, or at least jumpstart it during this pandemic.
Thank you. What are your priorities for the upcoming legislative session?
Well, the budget is my top priority. I think it's going to take the best and the brightest, and I'm not saying I'm it, but I am saying I am willing to listen to my constituents, which I have a lot of great input when it comes to finances and banking and so forth, and also for prioritization of where we need to focus our dollars. And I know that schools for me is something that is very important, and healthcare is another area where I've always worked on. I always say that our district outside of Rochester has probably most doctors and nurses and healthcare workers than any other part of the state. So we have a really great district when it comes to healthcare. And I was vice chair of that committee my first term in the Senate. So those are the areas where I'll be working on price transparency, PBM, as well as other areas of access to healthcare like the public option, which has a lot of traction here in Minnesota.
Thank you. A longer question. Under current law, revenue from incremental property taxes in a tax increment financing district, TIF district, do not have to be paid to the school district. Would you support state TIF legislation that would require revenue from the incremental property taxes in a TIF district to be paid to the school district? Why or why not?
That's a great question. I've heard that before, and I'm not against it. I know that there are some purists on TIF of how that law was set up and what's its purpose. So changing TIF is really, really difficult. I've actually tried to expand it to cover areas such as homeless youth, building of homeless, and ability to build affordable housing, and that's been really difficult. So changing in TIF is actually something that's easier said than done. I'm not opposed to it, but there is a school of thought that we should not change TIF as it's currently in statute and only make exceptions to the law on a very limited basis. But I think TIF is actually a good tool that we should look at for affordable housing.
Thank you. Our sixth question, and it's a longer one. After George Floyd's death, the public became aware that MPD Officer Chauvin had 18 prior complaints against him, 2 of which had resulted in disciplinary action. Where do you stand on legislation requiring a Minnesota police database that would disclose to the public all complaints against an individual officer, and why?
Well, we actually did pass House File 1 in one of July's special session, and it did have some data components to it. Part of it is that you will be have access to complaints for excessive force. It's a report on alleged misconduct database reporting. So that's one thing that was passed this last session. Of course, we'll see if we need to do more, but I'm all for transparency. A lot of times when you negotiate something through the union and through your contract with your employer, some of that information might become private information, and I think the public has the right to know when an officer has been in different instances reprimanded, but then it can easily transfer to a different police district. My dad was a police officer in Puerto Rico. I'm all to support our police. We just need to make sure that we are accountable to the people that we're supposed to be serving.
Thank you. A question about school testing. What kind of statewide testing should be done in Minnesota high schools to measure whether students are on track for college and career success?
That's a great question. And my first term, I did serve on the Education Policy Committee, so I'm a little rusty on all the different exams, but certainly I support having some sort of tracking that we will be able to, and now that my kids are going to join the school district, I'll be more well-versed on this. I think those tests, sometimes you take a test and you don't take it until too far ahead that you're missing the leaps of the growth of kids, and we can intervene a lot sooner. So there's been, and I can't recall a name at this point, tests that you can actually are able to measure on a more real-time basis that we should be able to implement versus a cut score at the end of your high school degree where you're either in or you're out. I think those are not very helpful, not even for our teachers to do a better job to make sure that they're prepared, but for our students to also take some measures ahead of time.
Thank you. Our eighth question. Are you in favor of legalizing recreational use of marijuana? Why or why not?
Well, for those who don't know, I did chief author one bill that had a hearing in the Senate a couple years ago. It was a bipartisan bill with Senator Scott Jensen from the Chaska-Chanhassen area, and we worked on it together to legalize responsible use of recreational marijuana. I really just read up on the issue and realized that this is inevitable, and if it's going to happen in Minnesota, that we are supposed to have the best law on the books. So I've been versing myself on the issue and learning from experts. We have a medical marijuana program right now that is very restrictive, and we've made an improvement on it. We have to do some work there. As a mother of 2 little kids, I do have a concern about access and making sure that we have the appropriate regulation and enforcement for it, and that the funding that comes out of it can potentially help in areas like substance abuse and also for enforcement.
Thank you. What are some of your ideas on potential policy solutions for youth tobacco use, including ending the sale of all flavored tobacco products and investing in youth tobacco prevention?
I certainly supported the Tobacco 21 bill, which limited who can have access to them. The next issue is the flavored cigars, or little cigars is what they call them, and also vaping. So again, as a mom of two little boys that I know are going to be experimenting some way, shape, or form, which is the reality because they have easy access in schools and other places, I want to make sure that they have the appropriate education. So I think it's a public health imperative that we support campaigns to tell kids to not do this, and to also, to the extent that we need to restrict the sale in some capacity, I'm open to that idea as well. But we'll learn more in legislative hearings. That's what the process is so important, so we know the proponents and the opponents and find a way that we can move forward to make sure that we are doing it responsibly.
Thank you. So this next question is kind of a change of pace here, and it looks at the Chambers of Commerce. The Excelsior Lake Minnetonka Chamber of Commerce recently announced it would likely close if it cannot raise additional funding. According to a recent article in the Star Tribune, other chambers of commerce are likely vulnerable as well. Is there a role for the state to help these organizations?
So I'm a chamber member of the Minneapolis Regional Chamber of Commerce. I have a small business in Uptown and in Lynn Lake area where some of the civil unrest happened. And I think the chamber is invaluable to be the voice of small businesses in particular. So I do see that they have a keen role. I support their efforts at the state level. I used to work at Target Corporation when I first got elected, so I know the role of the Minnesota State Chamber of Commerce as well as the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. I think they're critical to represent the voice of some of those businesses who might not have the arm of a lobbyist. So there should be some way that we can help businesses by also helping the chamber. So I haven't heard a proposal in particular. Love to hear more from them, but certainly support our area chambers.
You'll want to listen closely to this question. The Department of Human Services is planning on laying off staff and cutting spending on staff-run programs that serve vulnerable populations as well as sex offenders. These changes are projected to save $7.1 million in the current budget cycle and $70.7 million in 2022 and 23. Do you think that they would achieve these saving goals? And please give your reasons why or why not.
Well, again, I think having public hearings where we are able to hear from the department of why these cuts are necessary and why why isn't there some other area that we can potentially start that's discretionary. I don't think this is an area that would be discretionary in my bucket. We have to make sure we take care of our vulnerable populations, those who can't take care of themselves. That is part of the role of government. We want to make sure our communities are safe, and we want to make sure that people have treatment and have access to health care and to the treatment they need to get better. So I'm not saying that we should keep everyone locked up, but I certainly want to make sure that we are giving them the resources they need to be contributors and not make it a worse outcome by trying to save money, and in the long run it actually costs us more.
Question 12, and we are getting into the home stretch. The number of new COVID cases has been at high levels in recent weeks, with the Minnesota Department of Health reporting over 1,000 new cases today. Are we doing enough to control the spread, and what additional measures would you recommend?
Wow, I'm not the healthcare expert, but I listen to the science, and we have the privilege of being in a state where we have taken this virus seriously and where lots of leaders are trying to do their best with little information and developing information. So I'm first of all, I want to thank all those experts and scientists who are helping from the Mayo Clinic to the Department of Health to the governor's office. I think we are all trying to do the best we can to keep Minnesotans safe. So I think we can do more. We can learn from the science and be good examples to our kids and our family members, and if not do it for ourselves, do it for others. Wearing a mask like I am when I'm not speaking right now, being sure that you're cleaning your hands and keeping social distancing. This winter is going to be tough, and we need all of us to be very vigilant and help us follow the rules so we can get out of this faster.
Thank you. The state's reserve has been or will soon be depleted because of COVID-19 related expenses. What ideas do you have for rebuilding this reserve?
Well, helping our economy is going to take all of us, and especially containing the pandemic is the first step to doing so. So what I just said before, let's repeat that. Let's keep sure that we're practicing those best practices. I think there's areas where even this last year we were talking about online sports betting taxes. That's an area that both parties were open to discussing. A bonding bill is another area where we know we can find compromise and pass and get people to work. And then all the things that we need to do very prudent spending. And it doesn't mean we're going to disinvest, but we're going to keep doing things. We knew that there was a huge gap in childcare. I know that because I live it. But we know that if you can't pay and a pandemic came and took your job, you're really in a worse position as a family, and particularly women. So would I support to investing in certain areas? Absolutely, to make sure that at the end we come out of it stronger.
Okay, our last public question. What ideas do you have for the future of the state of Minnesota, especially around legislative actions during the next 6 years that we haven't addressed with our questions?
Well, I have served on transportation for my entire time in the Minnesota Senate, and we kept talking about sustainable transportation funding. We keep talking about roads and bridges, and we keep talking about it. I like to act on it, and it doesn't need to be the first thing that comes to mind is a gas tax, which I support, but in the middle of an economic recession as we're now facing, I don't think it's the most prudent direction. I do support looking into the future and building that future. So whether it's trains, whether it's the next thing, autonomous vehicles, I like to think ahead of a future where we are safer on our roads, when it's more efficient, where we have cleaner cars, and there's a role for government there. So I look forward to seeing that completed in my tenure at the legislature, which I hope before I leave that we get a vision for transportation and what that looks like in Minnesota.
Well, thank you. So that's it for the questions that we have. Now we'll invite the candidate to give her closing statement,
Wow.
which is 2 minutes.
Thank you for the time. This is the weirdest forum I've ever been part of, but I mean it in a very positive way because I'm glad that we had an opportunity to have the dialogue and conversation, even if it sounds like a monologue. My phone number is 612-968-4566. I get people calling me. We need to talk to each other. We need to talk to our neighbors. We need to be connected more than ever because people are having to deal with the most unprecedented and most bizarre moment in history in our lifetime, and we need each other. We need to tackle our mental health, to take care of each other, to take care of oneself. I'll do my part to take care of you by doing what I can in the Minnesota Senate to make sure that you have what you need, that you have your health care, that you have access to your medicine, that we are able to take steps and measures to make sure that you're safe and that you feel safe at home and that you trust your police that are there to do the work of keeping public safety. Again, I really recognize that we have a lot of challenges right now in the environment of politics, but don't give up on it. Don't give up on your democracy. We need you to vote. You can vote by mail. You can vote early. You can vote the same day of. Minnesota is one of those places that we've removed all those barriers and challenges to voting. Take advantage of them. Make your voice heard. And vote like your life depends on it, because it really does. And I will do my part to represent your voice, whether I agree with you or not. You will know where I stand, and I will do my best to be respectful of our differences and work with anybody in the legislature to accomplish the goals that are mutually beneficial for you and our state. So I appreciate the time to be part of this discussion, and stay safe. Wear your mask. We'll get out of this soon enough. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Melissa, for participating in this forum and for your willingness to participate in the democratic process by running for office.
Thank you.
You put out a lot when you run for office.
And our families do too.
Yeah. Thank you to the League of Women Voters of Edina for sponsoring this forum. The forum is being videotaped and will be available for viewing online through the City of Edina and for rebroadcast on Edina TV on Comcast Channels 8, 13, and Channel 16. It will also be on Edina TV YouTube, the City of Edina's website, and on Facebook afterwards. The forum will be available for viewing on the League of Women Voters Edina website as well, lwvedina.org. Thank you for attending tonight's forum. Please remember to vote on November 3rd. This concludes the forum for Senate 49. Good evening.